Hi, today we'll talk about sex and gender. Two words which are often used interchangeably in research, but however have separate meanings.
In this video, we'll talk about the difference between sex and gender, why it is important to account for one or the other in research, and how to do it.
Okay, let's start. What is sex and what is gender? Sex is assigned at birth and has mostly to do with physical and physiological features such as having XY chromosomes or having a uterus. While gender relates to your experienced or constructed identity, the way you feel about yourself. It is important to know that for some people the gender identity might not always align with their sex assigned at birth. Concerning sex, there are three options: male, female and intersex. The most common genders are man and woman. A majority identifies as either one of those. But there are many other genders next to man and woman, and sometimes people identify as both, or as neither man nor woman, as they might identify with another gender. Furthermore, people's gender identity can be fluid. This means that the way they identify themselves can change over time. Gender identity can be very personal, and everyone can have their own interpretation of their gender identity.
But why do we need this distinction in research? Sometimes in a study, you want to compare the results of two groups and see if there are any differences that are relevant to know. It is important to ask yourself the question, do you want to know the biological differences or some behavioral differences? For some studies, it is relevant to know the biological differences. For example, symptoms of heart attack can be different for males and females. And for some studies, it is relevant to know the behavioral differences. For example, do the same kind of advertisements work well for people identifying as men or women?
So, how can we more accurately account for this in research? We would like to give you some hands-on tips for how to use the words sex and gender right, and to make your research more inclusive. First, if you want to address people in general, you could be more inclusive and use participant or reader. In Dutch, beste deelnemer, lezer.
Second, ask yourself, is it necessary to obtain this type of information? What do I need it for? And how will I use it? Not every study benefits from collecting data on sex or gender, so then you should not include these questions.
Third, if for your study it is relevant to know more about the biological sex, you might ask, which sex was assigned to you at birth? Or in Dutch, welk geslacht is jou toegekend bij je geboorte? Don't forget to include the option of intersex.
Fourth, if you're more interested in behavior, you can ask the open question, what label do you feel best describes your gender? Or in Dutch, welk label beschrijft jouw genderidentiteit het beste? And leave the answer options open.
But note, when asking for someone's identity in closed format, you should always add the answer options not listed namely and I'd rather not say, or in Dutch, niet genoemd namelijk en zeg ik liever niet. It can be a sensitive question for people, since discovering your identity is not always a straightforward process.
We hope to have given you some new information and tips on how to make research more inclusive. This video was brought to you by UMPride. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions.